Today, our guest is a very special one because he actually has a fruitful academic and professional background in the field of mathematics. And he is an experienced content developer and teacher with a demonstrated history of working in the field of education. Please welcome Marc Sua. Hi, Mac. How are you?
Woo, 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 woo. I'm good. I'm good. Hello, thanks for inviting me on. I'm glad na you're starting your own platform. Glad you're starting your own talk show, and I should catch up on all your content. Actually, I'll go through all the YouTube stuff and I'll go through everything. Hi, how are you?
Yes, I'm doing good, and I'm actually very glad to have you here. So it's okay, just take your time in whatever content you have there. So this is the reason why I love Mac so much because we go way back in high school, and let's see if I can gather all of our batchmates to see if we can catch up with one like this. So let's start with going back to how high school was for you, and what were some of the most memorable moments that you had?
Grabe. Wala nang kakatuig eh. We got into high school in '06, right?
Oh,
06,
five.
2006, '05, '05. So
Yeah.
grabe, 20 years na. So I think it's really right na 20 years later, we're having a look back on our lives. And I would say life in high school is a little more straightforward than it is compared to the current times that we live in. Okay, we're all
Mm.
working.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us are slowly getting married. Some of us are finding their partners in life. High school was just focusing on what the next big step was. A lot of what we were trying to do in high school, for me in particular, was trying to find what the next big step was going to be. For me, no, one of the biggest things that I experienced in high school was in third year when I had the chance to go to Ateneo with one of our batchmates, James, also. And
Ah,
I had the
yes.
chance to experience what studying in Ateneo would be like. And it kind of set the tone for me in terms of what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to study. For me, that was a pretty formative time in my life. It was a summer, it was 6 weeks, but
Mm.
it kind of opened a lot of doors for me. There are these things that are going on outside of our little high school bubble. Because admittedly, di ba,
Yes.
high school ka, you're so focused on just yourself, just thinking about yourself and what you
Yes.
currently know. But that summer of '08 was a big milestone for me in particular. And that kind of influenced a lot of the things I would do in fourth year, which was trying to be better in all things. So there was math, which is the career I kind of carved out for myself. And just trying to show them you can't just be good at one thing. No? You also have to be well-rounded. So I decided na badminton, getting into sports, doing well was the other thing that I felt would make myself a little better. No, so badminton, and fourth year was the first and last time nakasulod ko og palaro. And that also changed me a bit because you really meet people from different regions, you meet people from different parts of the Philippines, and like, you get interact, uban Bisaya, uban mga Tagalog, from different places. So, and really number three for me was just being able to bond with the batch. They always joke na, kuha ako 1 year para mag-loyalty award or grade 2, sayang ako sa ka-year ba? But regardless of that 1 year, being able to bond with everyone in our batch, in our H4, that was really a formative time in my life because you never really forget high school. And after all the college life, I'm sure you experienced this also. You meet a lot of acquaintances in college that you
Yes.
feel na lifelong, ang uban, oh, we'll be friends forever. But in truth, I always say, you never really forget high school. High school always hits different, as the kids would say. And for me, the bonding moments, I would always say that my high school friends are my lifelong friends. And I always consider our high school batch as brothers and sisters in the rest of my life. And those three things, I think, were some of the most memorable times I've ever had in my life, actually. Not just high school, but really in my whole life.
So, just to give a little context of this, Mac is one of the top achievers in class. He actually graduated valedictorian. And what I'm glad about Mac is he's not the stereotypical geek that you see. I mean, yes, he's intelligent, he's also athletic, but he's actually a person who really goes along. And I would say you already had that leadership mindset in mind. And you're very friendly, but aloof at times, I would say.
Yeah, but they always say that my musical taste never changed. I think like some of the things I've listened to in high school are still probably some of the things I probably listen to now. Although just a few changes, but our batchmates always say I've never had a good musical taste, and I would tend to agree.
If you were to ask my POV on this, I actually don't mind when it comes to musical tastes of other people. Like, it actually depends on the experience, the wisdom gained. We're not saying that we don't go with the trend of the popular songs. There's a playlist of songs that generally defines us. So for me, I don't really mind it. And I think I still remember some of them. I think some of them are just teen pop, but I mean, I don't mind because I listen
Yeah.
to 90s teen pop. So you can go Google, you know who those people are. And yeah, that.
Drop your favorite ones in the comments later.
Well, that's a good one. Now that you mentioned about the formative decisions, you decided to take a course on mathematics. Why is that so?
I do remember why. First was kind of practical more because if you in high school, okay, you feel like you're good at something, so you feel that that's the right course for you. So as someone who was doing math competitions a lot,
Mm,
I felt like, okay, I think you should do a math course. I felt like I had a good aptitude for numbers. I felt I was good, so therefore that's probably something I should capitalize on. Work on your strengths, diba? And whatever your weaknesses are, just say that there's strengths that are yet to be developed. Number two, because I always wanted to do something more with math. I remember one conversation I had. It was with one of our batchmates, Ken Lee Go.
yeah.
I want to say nga we were getting ready for buwan ng wika man siguro itong
Okay.
presentation. And as for everyone who doesn't know, you're not quite productive for 3 weeks in a month. You're just going out and practicing every day. So there's a lot of time for conversations. And there was something that I asked Ken Lee, and Ken Lee was asking me what he wanted to take. As I wanted to take the math course, and I told myself, what else can I do with math? So this whole big idea that I was thinking of was, what can math do for things like the environment? As a bug-eyed high school student, you say, may tag na ay course ng math and environmental science with applied something engineering. Because that's something I always wanted to do. You're always thinking of the next big step, no? And math, I always felt had the power to do that. Even though I didn't know a lot more than trigonometry and statistics, there was always the potential. And for me, I wanted to look into inside potentials sa mathematics. I didn't always start out. Maybe you'll ask this question later. I took BS Math, but I actually entered Ateneo in a course called Applied Mathematics, Masters in
Hmm.
Mathematical Finance. So it was a course relatively new, and it was mainly for people who wanted to go into finance. I took that course because it tends to be the stereotype for those taking BS Math na minsan naghumanan na magmaestro ka or magmaestra. I didn't know enough at the time about unsay mga career opportunities. So I went with a relatively safer course, which was Applied Math in Finance, or AMF for short. So I started in AMF, and midway through my second year, I faced my first business course. I passed. I did pretty okay, but I kind of realized for myself that this wasn't the path I wanted for myself. And thankfully, it was a shift within the department. So I didn't get delayed, and I managed to graduate on time with everyone. So that's why I said this BS Math actually does open up a lot more things than just, working in finance, which is something I could have done, but decided not to. That's a story for later in this
All right, right.
discussion.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes. Prior to your pursuit of wanting to take math, then, did you had a childhood dream that was something unrelated to math?
I wanted to be a doctor. My family on both sides, we have no medical professionals. So I had this bit of an obsession with being the first in something. And that
Hmm.
was one thing I wanted to do. And then really actually a doctor. Like if in the multiverse of possibilities, I might be a doctor in
Yeah.
Earth 1059 or something.
But then math just drifted you into the actual
Yes.
universe.
Uh-uh.
So let's go into Macmac's career path of how he goes through math. Macmac went to Ateneo de Manila University, so he studied mathematics. Throughout those 4 years, he achieved his bachelor's degree in mathematics, and then he also happened to be the president of the Ateneo Mathematics Society by school year 2012 to 2013. But there's an interesting twist to that. He actually had a minor degree in history. So this actually keeps me interested. Tell us how you connected all of these together to form your university life.
An interesting question. My motto in life has always been, I think this is a nice motto for everyone. Keep your eyes open, keep your heart open, keep yourself open to different opportunities, different callings. No? When you're in college, it's a chance to be different. It's a chance to do something different than what you think, what you felt you're made to do. No? The first with regards to being involved in extracurriculars like the Ateneo Math Society or AMS. That's another thing. Since high school, it was germinating in my brain. I'm like, you know what? We should have an org. We should have a club that does math and does math competitions. Only for me to find out, inigabot na ako sa Ateneo, oh, there already is one. So you start looking, it's an opportunity to learn, Mark. I always tell people, regardless of context, whether I'm speaking to anyone from Manila, whether I'm speaking to anyone back home in Cebu who have maybe siblings or maybe friends who are entering into college, extracurricular activities are really important. They're really changing things. They build character and they build skills that you can't learn in just the academics of your course. So why I decided to go on and pursue being president was really because I wanted to test asa mabot akong leadership skills. Like, do I even have leadership skills to begin with? President ka sa high school government. All things considered, for everyone to know, our school is pretty small. So you really want to test if you can apply what you know to a bigger community of time around 350 members. 350 members within Ateneo, and at the same time, you interact with other people from different universities. So how does it translate when you're not just speaking to people within the Ateneo community? That's one thing that made me go back. What are my foundations of my being, which is really being open to different opportunities, being open to whatever comes your way. So that's why I decided to pursue being a president, because I wanted to see what I could add, what I could change with the way that the org was going. And thankfully, some of the projects that we started in 2012 are still being carried out and still being innovated until today. That sometimes brings a small tear to my eye because this did stand the test of time. And this project in particular talks a lot about, we called it MathCon or Math Conference. Just like a conference, you learn something new about the topic, learn about little something new about the subject. And that MathCon has slowly innovated into what it is today, which is bringing people from different career paths, different things like music. You think sometimes there has to be some kind of math here, and those kinds of people are still coming in and still giving talks at MathCon even today in 2025. And how is math used in something like statistical analysis, in sports, math in government, math in policy making. So that's still something that rings true about the organization. We're always looking to find out how math is being applied in all walks of life. And why I took a degree in history. In Ateneo, it's a thing to take a minor degree. It's baked into the way that your major program of study is structured, because you know this, we have a lot of courses that we take that don't necessarily merge. Why am I taking theology, philosophy, or
Right.
history that has
Right.
no bearing whatsoever on, like for you, IT, diba?
Yeah.
Ano sa relate ani sa IT, or I just want to take IT and get into an IT job. And my first history professor kind of helped me learn a little more about history as being a story. Normally when history departments are grouped or categorized, normally we'd say social sciences, kay that deals with groups of people coming together. But in truth, he'd always make this argument that history should be a humanities subject, because it's a story of humanity as it goes along the years, how it adapts over the years. And then that really hooked me. And it also helped that he said na I'm good at writing daw. So, whoa, okay, sir, you got me there. Okay, so let's pursue this one in history. So I went to the department one day and I saw him and I was applying to take the minor, and yun siya, so what are you doing here? I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take a minor degree in history. So then he said, I told you to take a minor in creative writing, not history, but okay, I guess I'll have you here then. And throughout the course of the history minor, there was one subject in particular that really emphasized the point of how history is the story of humanity. And this is a course on social memory, no, or how different groups of people remember things. And that influences the way that history is written. So in particular, the focus of that elective we took was social memory in the context of World War II and the war in the Pacific. And some of the things that we learned there was, why do certain countries portray themselves differently in terms of their museums, in the way that they make certain statements? So in countries like Japan or Germany, since history is always written by the victors. So
Right.
and then these countries in particular, they came out on the wrong side of history, but because they did understand that in years to come that they did initially fall on the quote unquote wrong side of history, they've taken to reorganizing their museums certain ways. So in Japan, they do their museums in certain ways. They hold ceremonies on certain specific days because they want to remind the people that yes, we made mistakes, but now we're trying to rectify those mistakes. Same with Germany, because everything that happened in Germany.
Yes.
They are really working to help their citizens remember that what happened in World War II is not something we want to happen again because genocide is wrong. No,
Right.
so that's something that they've been actively working on. And that really made me ask myself, what is our memory and how does that memory affect the way that history is being written in our country? It spoke to me in a way that also history is not just memorizing dates, memorizing places, memorizing events, memorizing. I remember we're getting grade 4. We had these quizzes on these are the regions of the Philippines. Remember what are their top produced products? What are the provinces? My time studying history made me realize history is more than just dates. It's more than personalities, more than unsay pinaka-popular nga product sa Region 3, rice.
Yeah.
It's really about the story of people making their way through life, which is something that we all can relate to. And that goes back to Merg. Always keep an open mind, always keep an open heart to learning something new. And if you take time to learn something, you'll realize that there's a lot more you can learn outside of your specialization.
I like the point when you talked about history. I actually felt that back then when we were still studying history, I get the idea why people hate taking history classes. It would have been better if there was a social relevance implanted so that that would make them appreciate. So, based on what you have learned, how do you connect history, most especially in the context of social memory or narratives, to mathematics?
That's a big subject, no? And actually, that background in history kind of influenced the way that my master's is slowly taking shape, no? Okay. There's this field of math education, which is what I'm specializing in. It's a field called critical mathematics education. In other countries, they call that mathematics for social justice. This field of mathematics deals with social justice, deals with sustainability. How do you help students learn math through engaging in social realities? And I think that the idea of narratives, the idea of stories and history actually really does intertwine with math a lot more than I used to think. I feel there's a branch within critical mathematics education called ethnomathematics, which deals with different indigenous groups who have been doing math in a different way. The way they've been doing it is history that has been passed down from generation to generation called the indigenous knowledge systems. And these indigenous knowledge systems have been passed on since time immemorial from when the first group came to the Philippines or something. And then that history of knowledge, that history of how they got to these types of calculations, why do we do irrigation for certain things a certain way, is inherently mathematical, is deeply mathematical, and it's a story. And how do these people pass this on from one generation to another? Through stories, through a history, through telling their descendants, we've done it this way for a long time because it works for where we are. And of course, times change, climates change, weather changes, modern technology changes a lot of things. So they always manage to make a way. Okay, if this problem happens, we have this in the background. We can do this. So history and mathematics has always gone together. It's just that somehow, because mathematics has always been viewed as neutral, you always say that if you're a mathematician, you have to be cold, hard, and logical and purely rational. But in truth, not telling people the history of mathematics or the deeper idea of mathematics, is actually very alienating and exclusionary, especially because generally in Asia, since a lot of us were colonized countries, our idea of mathematics is deeply, deeply Western. we do things this way because this was brought here by our Western counterparts, and this is the way it should always be done. Our standards for mathematics performance has always been generated by international organizations that are
Yes.
run by people from the West. So knowing the history of our country would actually help us understand that these standards have to be tweaked for a deeper Filipino mathematics. That's something that we're slowly advocating for. How do we make a Filipino mathematics that is deeply based in indigenous knowledge as well as Filipino knowledge that has been passed down from our ancestors. So that's how I feel history and narratives and story actually work in mathematics.
That's actually an interesting connection. Now let's talk about your professional career. In 2013, you joined the Department of Education where you became a technical assistant to the Office of the Secretary. Tell us how it was like within that time.
That was a whirlwind of a time. I was only with the department for, I want to say, a year and a half, but in a year and
Mm.
a half, it felt like graduation times two at the time I was working, the time, okay? Everything had to happen on such a quick timeline, okay? This was the time when we're getting K to 12 into the full law. And actually, I came in the day after they signed the law. So
Okay.
where I was on there, pagsut ko, no, may tao. My boss's secretary said, just everyone's a little tired. They enjoyed a little too much after the law was signed. Like after party sila gamay after. And
Okay.
a lot of my work in DepEd was really revolved around numbers. Are the numbers trying to say? So together with the team, we were trying to put everything together, number the essence of data and what stories that data can tell. We're trying to plan for K to 12, and for some institutions that means what else can I do? Okay, I'm only equipped to go until grade 10, which was for us fourth year. Do you have enough space for grade 11 and 12 rooms? For some universities, what happened was how do we plan for the 2 years why students, when our first cohort gets into grade 12, there are 2 years that universities would not have any freshmen and sophomores. So what will they do? So a lot of our planning was taking certain enrollments, was taking certain enrollment data and trying to project them, what would happen X years into the future and how many classrooms that would translate to, what data do they have regarding students who are enrolled maybe in special science classes, who show interest in technical vocational courses or are interested in ABM. So that's a lot of what the work was. And it was my boss who really helped me remember that how is mathematics used to change society. And my time in working in that ed really helped me realize this abstract concept I learned in my senior year, which was what does it mean to show a preferential option for the disadvantaged, for the marginalized? Because that was something we learned in theology. The technical term is preferential option for the poor, but when you say poor, that doesn't just mean the financially poor, but that also means the marginalized, also
Right.
means those who are disadvantaged. So my time working in that helped me realize that what do these numbers in this database say about a school or what they call their your last mile schools? What does this data say about their capability to implement such a wide sweeping law like this? And being able to visit our different schools throughout the country really it made that concept a concrete thing. Okay, we always said that if we can implement this planning in schools that our last mile schools are very short on resources, are located in very distant areas, then that means we can actually make K to 12 a success. So that was a lot. So at the time I wasn't so good at Excel yet. I don't think I'm that good until now, but we had a teammate who was really good at Excel. So it was really us just trying to churning out the numbers and that teammate of mine making that a reality in Excel, all the VBA, all the macro. She was the one who helped make all of that a reality. So we'd send this Excel, this, I don't know how to describe that Excel anymore, that Excel and sending it to different regions, different school offices, and saying, hey, here's something that you could use to help you guys plan for how many classrooms you might need, how many teachers you might need, because that would also inform us at central office. Okay, we need to lobby for these, for more budget for classrooms, for more budget for teachers, for more training. How would we run everything? If we cut my 1.5 years into two phases, no, that was the first phase of my time. And then the second phase of my time was about disaster risk reduction and I always look back on this and I say, wow, that really happened. So disaster risk reduction in DepEd means addressing what happens when schools are in the state of calamity. So when I left, the office was still small office with no real director who had a lot of will to make certain policies happen. But then after we left, it started to get bigger now. So the first big crisis where I entered into was during typhoon. They don't use Yolanda now because of the emotional trauma it brings to Filipino people. People use Haiyan now, right? Oh my goodness. Grabe. It happened on November 8th. And it was raining hard here in Manila. Then we're like, oh, well, nahasol lang ko gamay. Kaya we're, oh, I'll go home late. Pero sige, okay ra. And then I had the weekend because the 8th was a Friday. And then that's when Haiyan made landfall in the Philippines. And then on the 9th and the 10th, I was supposed to have a fun night out with college friends and, just get together, have a few drinks, talk about how work was. On the 9th, at around 8 p.m., my boss messages me and says, hey, Ma, to rough it up a little, do you know how to bike? Ako, like, oh, yeah, I can bike. Sure, of course. I am willing to rough it up. I said, yeah, sure, sir. Why? Because we're going to Tacloban. We're going to Haiyan Center. And I said, oh, oh, okay. Did not know that. So, suffice to say, I left my friends and said, hey, I have a very important work thing I need to do. And we printed out maps kaya at the time my electricity sa Tacloban and we needed maps to get around and we needed a list of the schools that we might need to visit. So the 9th, I was in Manila. Both my boss and I fell asleep with our phones on our faces. On the 10th, we were supposed to fly a military plane into Tacloban, but they were prioritizing military people for the military and the police first as first responders. So on the 10th, my boss said, hey, there's a chance we can get in through Cebu. So we went to Cebu. My parents decided to talk to my boss. We're like, I didn't have a girlfriend yet, so my boss was the first one who met my parents. So they had this really long, deep talk about, is it safe? Is it okay? And I said, yeah, okay. It's going to be fine. I'm going to be watching out for him. I just really need him to help. So there, November 11th, he looks at me. We finally board the C-130 at 4 a.m. And we land in Tacloban and he looks at me and says, "Kala mo, nakalimutan ko. Happy birthday, Mac." So I spent my first work birthday in Tacloban. And that really made me understand that every number we put into an Excel file, that's a student, that's a teacher. There's a story behind that student. There's a story behind that teacher. There's a family they need to get back to. So that's why when my boss, he'll hate me for saying this. He's really a hot-headed person. And you kind of understand why, because we were using public funds. We're lobbying for public funds to be used for these people. So we can't get it wrong. It's
Right.
it's our taxpayer money. It's not my money. It's the people's money. And we need to make sure that the people's money are being used. So we went to Tacloban and we went through everything. We saw schools being used as evacuation centers. And that was a big chunk of work. And after that, we started really looking into the curriculum because there's a subject on disaster risk reduction and climate change. And that's something we decided to take a look at again because of what happened after Typhoon Haiyan. And actually, another thing that was maybe foreshadowing, my first work trip ever was to Compostela Valley in Mindanao,
Mm.
which bubble me kind of forgot that Compostela Valley was hit by Typhoon Pablo in 2012. The images are still really vivid in my mind. We visited three schools that had been displaced. Now they were having school in tents and temporary learning spaces that were provided by different organizations. It's really hot inside, but the students and the teachers were really very optimistic about how they could keep learning, how they could keep education going even in the face of what had happened in spite of their schools being washed out. Our disaster risk reductions office was really hell-bent on making sure that learning would always happen regardless of the disaster. And that time in DepEd, particularly my time with disaster risk reduction, made me think really about is mathematics education doing its part in helping students realize that the world they're living in and the world they will inherit, can they use their education to make sure that learning can go on? In essence, keep our world going even when we're gone.
Well, those were actually big realizations for you that really expanded your world. Since you have been in that department that deals with education, you decided to expand yourself in education because after being there for almost 2 years, so in 2014, you became a mathematics content developer for Ayala Education and for their senior high school program. So, was it more like bringing what you learned in application to equip for those in the academy? Was that kind of setup you had there?
I moved into that role because I was curious about how to write mathematics curriculum. And I wanted to look at education from a different lens. In DepEd, you're looking at it from the lens of an administrator. Moving to this role as a content developer, I'm looking now at education from the side of a teacher or someone who implements lessons. No? So that was something I wanted to learn. That was something I wanted to look into. How is our curriculum adapting? Admittedly, at the time, I was a bit young and I wasn't as equipped as I am now. So maybe some of the curriculum I was writing, I felt could have been better. And it was fun while it lasted. I got to talk to different teachers, other the teachers that were working within Ayala's education group at the time. It was just starting. I really got to see how they would teach, how you kind of have to push back sometimes against traditional teaching and to make a change. And actually, it was because of my time in Ayala, because to be a content developer, to be a curriculum writer, you have to actually teach to
Yeah.
test commercial proof of concept, no? So one of the first things that they told me was, okay, you're going to be writing curriculum, but because we want you to know how we want our lessons to go, you're going to need to teach. So we had a little pilot group of students that I would teach every Wednesday for, I want to say, 2 to 3 months. And that's actually where I really fell in love with teaching. And I would say that Ayala was a big mark on my life, but it ended up being a bit of a transition period for me into what I really came to love doing.
That's actually a very interesting feat. So let's fast forward that a bit. After your time there as a content developer, on 2016, you became a senior high school math teacher of Xavier School in San Juan. This is in San Juan, Manila, right?
Yeah.
So when you joined there, you had teacher training for the Jesuit mission schools in Bukidnon.
So Xavier is run by the Jesuit Order of Priests, and most religious orders every summer. The last time they did it was when I was there in 2019. So what they do, they ask teachers from their schools to help train the teachers in the mission schools. Okay, they're aimed specifically for, at least for the Jesuits in particular, they're aimed to help reach out to marginalized communities or communities that are very hard to reach, really hard to reach. This part of Bukidnon. From Bukidnon, you have to travel 2 to 3 hours to get to a medyo mountainous area called Miarayon. So their teachers are there and it's hard to teach when the ability to get resources is a little difficult. Kay. Truth be told, there's not a lot of internet up there, and in this day and age, internet has become somewhat of a necessity, which is another conversation about digital exclusion, which people need to have. But something that we wanted to do, no, we wanted to reach out to our mission schools and help the teachers to extend high quality of education also. So that was my way of feeding back into my passion. Because when I started teaching Merle, I felt that yeah, I like teaching. I was really happy about teaching, but that time doing that training, working with our mission school in Bukidnon, it kind of lit a fire again inside me. There's so much more you can do pa with your teaching. It's really just interfacing with different teachers. You're coming from this context, they're coming from this context. How can we learn from each other instead of being like, oh, look at me, I'm from the big school, from the big city. I'm going to teach you how to be better. But in truth, you don't really know everything. So it was a way to interface with them to learn from them. I'm like, oh, we're teaching it this way. Kay, we have students who are from indigenous groups. Then I say, oh, I teach it this way. Kay, our students, they're almost the same. So Marag, we learn from each other on how to provide differentiated curriculum, differentiated teaching. So it kind of lit a fire in me again, Marag. Okay, there's so many things I don't know yet. And I like that feeling of not knowing because I realized recently that I'm a bit of a control freak. My wife tells me that she realized that I was a bit more of a control freak than I had let on in the past. No? So not knowing made me really push to be better to learn something more.
I'm glad you are that kind of teacher who is adaptable in that way. So now that you have talked about your experiences in teaching, what has become of your teaching approach in terms of math? How do you ensure that you make math an enjoyable subject for your students?
It's a difficult question. That's something I'm trying to answer with my thesis. Just is it enjoyable? So this is always the biggest question, no, in teaching. Murag. If my students, if they enjoy it, if it leaves a mark on them, no, I think that's something that is more important than, well, enjoying is also important. So I wouldn't say relax in the classroom because that would imply that you're a bit of a pushover. Really, for me, I was trying to make math a little more enjoyable was telling a few stories in mathematics, helping, how word problems are presented in mathematics. They're kind of bland.
Yeah.
They use things that we don't even know about. So the classic example is that when you're learning mixture problems in grade 5 or grade 6, you're learning about antifreeze, which in our context in the Philippines, it's not an antifreeze.
Yeah.
But you're just told, okay, basta solve it. It doesn't have anything in the context of the students. Students like, okay, whatever, antifreeze, I'm just gonna solve it and whatever, and I forget it because I'm never gonna use antifreeze. But I just try to make things more real by using sometimes you play around a little. You use the names of the students in the word problems and make it
Yeah.
in a bit of a comical situation. And they
Yeah.
laugh. They say, "Uy, uy, si Unsa nas problem," and
Yeah.
then they laugh. That kind of helps to make them enjoy a little bit more. But at the same time, how I try to make it a little more enjoyable is not quite enjoyable, but something that to stick with them more. Talking about my life experiences in DepEd, how did math work there? How did I use math? And then at the same time, telling them, in the real world, these are things that we can try to do. Like I teach statistics in school, so I always tell them now, okay, these are the mean, the median, the mode, etc., etc. This is standard deviation, this is the variance. I don't like, here's how you solve this, blah, 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 blah. It's always, okay, this is what it looks like. But in reality, we don't really do that anymore. No one does that. So I use technology more. We try using, because we're an Apple school, so we use the numbers instead of Excel. But I say, okay, let's just use Google instead because that's closer to Excel. Because I always tell them, you don't go to a person and say, here, look at my numbers. No one knows what numbers is because everyone uses Excel or more people use Google Sheets actually.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
making it more realistic, making them realize that math is alive and math is applied in so many other things. And funny enough, after my first batch graduated in 2017, like 2 years after, one of them messaged, Yo, Mr. Sua, it's so funny. I was working because some of them have like stores and everything, but I'm a family business or some
Mm-hmm.
small stores, and they were saying, "Yo, I remember our class in statistics. Sure, I did they call us sure, short for teacher. Sure, I did standard deviation and I did the linear regression like you taught us. And wow, it really helped. It helped us decide how to do our inventory and everything. Sure, thanks talaga for teaching us how to do it on Excel, how to do it on spreadsheets. It's those things that make you realize na, okay, math can be so much more than just the solve with no context whatsoever. And really just trying to make them use the mathematics in situations. Kaya diba, math, you say, okay, problem, answer. So what I try to do is, okay, here's a problem, here's an answer. What does this answer tell you to do? Or what action does this answer ask you to do? No? Well, math education, in particular, statistics education, has always been a very rich field, no, for these kinds of questions. Kaya statistics has always been, okay, we do this because we're looking for an action. In math, like trigonometry or in calculus, okay, we integrated this function which represents this. Here's the answer for this. Okay, what's that answer tell you? I differentiated this cost function and I got an answer. Okay, what does this question do? What does this answer to your question do? It's a maximum. Okay, what does it mean in the context of that problem? So those are the things I try to do to make the mathematics learning maybe enjoyable, but at the same time really leave a mark on them.
I'm glad that we are in an opportunity that we know how to educate better. I like that kind of approach that we are very realistic in terms of teaching math. And you actually even expanded yourself, not just only teaching students, but you're also taught teachers during the pandemic via the form of a radio show. I'm like,
Oh
okay,
my
so
God.
this is where I'm curious with because teaching in a classroom is different and then teaching in a radio show is another realm. So were you hesitant to join the show because I know this is a public audience? Are you the introverted type and all of these?
No, definitely not introverted. Uh, people always have to yank me away because I can spend too much time talking to a person that like, oh, so there na." This is like, I end up being late to something because I run into someone and I can jabber for forever. Was I hesitant? So this whole show, this whole Radyo Turuguro was something that happened because of the pandemic. Because during the pandemic, education kind of paused. Everyone was like, oh, how do we do this now? And it was an initiative by the Ateneo Salt Institute, Science and Art of Learning and Teaching, and the Ateneo Teacher Center, and which eventually become the School of Education in Ateneo. They wanted to find a way to help teachers learn how to teach specifically in a pandemic setting where it was all distance learning. For the well-off schools, how would you do online learning? Okay, here's a story about that. No, the head of the School of Education, when he was still the director at the time, I was a principal of Xavier at the time. So he was asking our high school principal, hey, do you know any math teacher who might be extroverted enough to host a radio show that deals with helping to train public school teachers in whatever capacity we can? And my high school principal says, I have the perfect person. His name's Makma. He used to work in DepEd. He's very extroverted and he's a math teacher. Like, so she went up to me and told me, these are the words she used. Hey, would you be interested to do a radio show with my partner, teacher Rita? She left it at that. She did not add that it would be a year-long commitment to hosting a show every Tuesday from 6 to 6:30 p.m. I'm like, oh my God. So when I went to the first meeting, they say, okay, yeah, we will do this. So hi, I'm Mark, I'm from Xavier, la la la. And then the head, see Father Johnny was like, okay, yeah, so we'll look at this for the first 6 months and then we'll see for another 6 months. I'm like, we're doing this for 6 months? This is a constant thing. I did not know. No one told me. The information given to me must have been deliberately modeled in uncertainty and vagueness because I said yes without asking more details. So, in line with my philosophy in life of being open to whatever opportunities come your way, I said yes, and I was pretty happy I said yes because we got to meet a lot of people. We got to talk to a lot of math education experts who, now that I'm in my master's, are people that I've guested on the show and are people I'm working with in the completion of my master's. So, oh, I did not know this opportunity actually led to a lot of learning also. There's more to math education, and that's actually it's from them that I learned how mathematics education has been evolving. I was really grateful for that experience, not grateful for all the stressful days I had. Oh, who's this guest? Oh, we need a guest. Oh, do I know a guest? Can I find a guest? Can I find a guest on very, very short notice? Oh, I need to make a script. Oh, we need to meet them. So you have to plan episodes, you have to plan scripts, you have to plan your work. Oh, this month is aning a month, so let's theme our episode that way. Oh, that was very stressful, but in the end, it was really worth it. And I'll never forget that phase in my life.
It actually works that you're extroverted because you're confident anywhere you go. You can be on the front, you can be on the backside, and that's what's good in you, Bo. So after your radio stint, you continued teaching at Xavier. It's actually interesting part that your current career is now in teaching, and I'm actually seeing some parallelisms because for those who want a little bit of trivia about Macmac, his mother is actually a school teacher. His mom actually teaches Chinese. So, Siansi Myrna, if you're listening to this, hi there. It's like passing the baton. Did you ever expect this thing to happen in your lifetime?
Honestly, no. I don't know. She would be the first to say at the time na don't teach. But then I guess over time, her heart kind of softened to it. It's quite a noble profession. She had this epiphany a few years back from her friends. You should be happy that I'm teaching. I entered into the profession because not a lot of people have patience for it. And when she told me that story, she and Daddy told me that they're happy with the path I've chosen. And I said, okay, I think it's been, I think I made the right decision. I found my calling, and I'm especially happy that they both support it because my family's opinion also matters very much to me.
I'm actually glad for you. I think what made you different as an educator because your passion has been there. Everywhere you went throughout your career, you brought that passion. It has gone a long way, no doubt about it. So, looking back at your colorful career, what are some of the most memorable life lessons that you've learned and you've brought along the way?
If there's anything that I learned from my time in high school and in college, it's always going to be, well, actually all the way into work. Number one, and I think this is my motto in life is always be open to learning something new. Be open to any experience because you never know how that changes you. And I am a firm believer in this idea of I read this word in a book and it's never left. No, because they always use the idea of kismet. It's like a Turkish word for destiny, although destiny doesn't quite capture it now. So in essence, I've always believed that experiences are given to you because they're meant to put you on your path. So I always believed in kismet, and I'm here because I was meant to be here. And it was because I chose to be open to the experiences as well. That's what led me here. So if there's anything that I would really say, it's to be really open to everything and anything. And the moment that you close yourself off to learning something new, just because you think it's a waste of time or something. Maybe there's an opportunity na this might actually be the path for you, but because you said no, it might take you longer to get there. So number one really, and I think that's the biggest thing, is always to be open because I tell students this, what do you lose in saying yes? Because if you say yes, you open yourself up to opportunities you would never have known be open to you. And you stand to gain a lot more when you say yes than when you say no. So, one of course, diba, that presupposes you've done in the right place to say yes, or you've met people who can vet that this opportunity you're saying yes to is a legitimate opportunity. Basig scam man di ay siya. No? Basig scam man di ay. So really say yes to new opportunities, say yes to learning something new. You're never too old to learn something new. You're never too young for any opportunity. You're there because that opportunity, because that path is for you.
I think that's what keeps any career to last. Learning is, I would say, a necessity because things change and things get up to date. So you can't just stick to one. So in order for you to thrive, then you really have to learn something new. So that's a very good key point to have there, Max. Now that you have talked about this learning, so you took your Master's of Science in Mathematics Education degree of the Ateneo Mathematics Department under the DOST CB PSME program or the Department of Science and Technology Capacity Building Program in Science and Mathematics Education. So, as you are pursuing your master's degree under that program, what are your aspirations for mathematics in the Philippine context?
I always want Philippine mathematics to bloom, no? Okay? The problem for me, it's our country in general. I don't know if it's a problem or as much as a context, a situation that our country faces. Is always this. There's so many cultures. There's so many things that are going on. What is the true Filipino identity? And then that gets segregated pa into this is the identity for the upper class. This is the identity for the middle class. This is the identity for the lower class. So is there a way for us to create a Filipino mathematics that transcends social classes? Okay. I was volunteering at a conference recently, and over lunch, one of them said something about an ontology in words. So, an ontology is like there's a collective meaning, there's a collective knowledge when you use certain words in certain languages. So, what's an example of that? When we say, diba, in Bisaya or in Tagalog, when you say hinati or when you say ito nga, that word doesn't necessarily always mean cut it in half.
Hmm.
So when you say ito nga or ihati, you can cut it up for many different people. When we say the word kilig, it's a difficult translation. because even translating it to something like butterflies in your stomach doesn't really quite embrace the full term on its own.
So
No,
being
so
giddy is not really the full translation for that one.
yeah, it's not full, no. So understanding that to create a Filipino mathematics doesn't mean just translating everything into Filipino, because that's really not the answer. Okay, truth be told, not a lot of people speak the language well, or maybe not a lot of people grow up speaking Filipino. So it's really understanding all these complex layers and coming up with something distinctly Filipino. It might not happen in our lifetime, but it's something that we all want to work towards. And that's something that I'm very, and something especially because I was saying critical mathematics education, mathematics for social justice, that influences how a curriculum is made. Okay? When we write curriculum, it's not necessarily bland. Those are informed by experiences or that people bring in. And there are common experiences for many Filipino people, which is maybe riding a jeep or traffic, bad traffic. In Metro Manila, there's always my riders riding trains. In Cebu, it might be roads which have been causing traffic because the roads are too small and not wide enough. But if you take everything a Filipino context, it's riding a jeep. So how does riding a jeep influence Filipino mathematics? How does that experience, which carries a lot of things in it, how can we work that into our curriculum and use it as a way to teach mathematics? And how does the diversity of our languages, how does that also affect the way we teach math, especially like in the way we measure things, di ba? If you say this, Pinoys understand that that's like a meter or something.
Yes.
You say certain words, they mean something for Pinoys, di ba? So can we use these terms in our formal school mathematics curriculum, di ba? And not have to always say, pull something from the West and say, the West uses yards, therefore we'll put the yards there. We don't measure by yards, di ba? So if we measured in a purely Filipino way, then we can translate that eventually. So I want to work towards writing a curriculum that understands the Pinoy sentiment and that understands the whole Pinoy lived experience, di ba? And if we can put in something like sustainability, especially with the way that students view weather, that would be very important, di ba? Because like in the Philippines, we always just say there's hot and there's hotter as weather. So that's something that we all understand. So that's something an experience we can use in making a truly Pinoy curriculum.
I'm actually so interested in that. It may not reach into our lifetimes. I hope it doesn't only end on paper, but it's really a paper that comes to life. And I'm rooting for you that you will ace it.
We can do this.
Yes, you can, you can. So let's talk about how do you encourage a person who says to himself or herself, I'm not good in math, to pursue math as something that he or she can't be bored of, can't be scared of. And what can you also advise for those who are math educators?
For those who are feeling down about their supposed inability to do mathematics, in one way, it's always helping them remember that they can still work hard, no? That they can ask for help. I think that sometimes the problem with some of these students is that sometimes they don't ask for help or they don't reach out. They feel that it's all on them to get better, when in truth, it's not just on them. They can reach out to the people, that they have a community that's always rooting for them. That's on the student side. On our teacher side, it's helping students realize that mathematics is not just about problem solving. So that's one thing that we've been trying to study in recent years, that to focus only on problem solving is actually a very limiting view of mathematics. But one of my research interests is the idea of problem posing. Can students ask questions from problems that they've already seen or from the concepts that they've learned? And a lot of the research has shown that problem posing actually invites people like this who feel down on mathematics to have better outcomes in learning mathematics. It's posing is a low ceiling to entry, but it has a very high benefit if they
Mm.
undergo the idea of problem posing. So maybe for me as a teacher, it might be teaching things a different way, because problem posing, like I mentioned, it can benefit the poor performers, quote unquote, but also engage the high performers, no, in all ways. Can you ask a good question? Do you understand the math that you're understanding because you're able to produce a question? So changing the perspective, changing the paradigm, and just try to learn a little bit more, like find something about mathematics, maybe take a step back because sometimes they're so involved in just, oh, I can't solve this problem. Oh, I can't solve these problems. That's why I don't understand. Maybe one thing for them could be looking at different applications, like how are these in our textbooks, apart from all the problems that you're given, the drills that you're given. There are sections of your textbooks that are, how is this used in real life? So maybe that's something for them to try. Maybe that's something that they can engage. Na, okay, let's try these other parts of our textbook that talk about how it's applied. And maybe by looking through that, they find insight into the parts that they're having a problem with. Because when you start a certain unit of knowledge, when you're doing it part by part, and you don't see how the big picture connects, like for me, it kind of throws me off. But then this is why I normally do better in finals than in part by part. Okay, by the time you get to the finals, you understand how these things
Mm.
interweave or how they weave together, So that's why, okay, now I know why this thing is different, this thing is different, this thing is different. So that helped me. So maybe giving them a bigger perspective of what that specific branch of math does might help students who are feeling down about why can't I do math or why can't I, it's asking them to have a bigger picture. I would recommend to math educators is to start, this is my bias speaking, no? Start looking into critical mathematics education as a field that we can start doing research in and also problem posing because in the Philippines at least we've been doing research in it for almost 20 years, but we need mathematics educators to do more work in it because that is what the times call for, to be engaged socially, to be engaged in the world as well because the sustainability and the climates are changing. No? So mathematics educators need to find a way. And I would recommend that they start looking into critical mathematics education, mathematics for sustainability as their way forward. No? And that's one, to look at those fields. And two, to think of themselves as more than just teaching math, but really remember that apart from the math, they are also teachers. So to find ways to really connect with students. Some people are really scared of their math teachers and I understand why. So I'd recommend them to remember that more than just being math teachers, they're teachers. So I'd recommend that they really start building relationships with their students so that their students can feel at ease with them.
I think that's something that we can reform on how we do math because that would be make us comfortable to really take math as second nature. So really hoping the best for mathematics because I do believe we do have potentials for math, actually. We
Yes.
really do. So before we wrap up with this map, what wakes you up early in the morning?
Actually, what wakes me up every morning is soon to be my own family.
Oh,
Because my wife and my child coming soon. So that gets me up every morning is spend
oh.
time with them and to really not just be professionally excellent, but to be a good family man as well. So that's really what wakes me up in the morning.
How many months is your child now?
Not yet, actually. We're expecting her anytime this month. So maybe by the time this episode drops, nakagawas na siya.
Wait, so she's in her ninth already?
Mm. Mm.
Oh my goodness, time flies so fast. And what's the gender reveal for that one?
It's a girl. It's a girl.
Oh, okay. I'm sure deep inside that you really wanted your very own son, like someone like your mini me of sorts.
Yeah, I am happy with whatever is given.
All right. So yeah, I really wish you the best in the family of your own. I'm very happy for you with that. To our next father in this batch, do you have plans to grow your family after your daughter then?
We'll see. We'll see where the road takes us.
Yeah.
I don't want
And
to promise anything yet.
yeah, I mean, it's all right. And since you're expecting your daughter, I know it's going to be a different motivation for you as a father. So you work even harder. You're going to finish your thesis even harder. I'm really, really happy for you that another chapter in your life is bringing and you just love to do what you love to do. So we here will be rooting for you for that. So thank you
Thank
very much,
you.
Mac, for taking your time in this one. I know we've talked a lot, but all that we've talked about are actually nuggets of wisdom, nuggets of experience that we can all really learn about. So again, thank you very much for your time and thank you for taking this opportunity with me.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to reconnect.
Thank you very much again, ma'am. And it's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.